If learning seems easy, you're probably not learning anything. You know that moment when you watch 3 YouTube videos on a specific topic, read 2 articles, and think, wow, I understand everything. I've mastered this topic. And then you try to apply what you've learned.
I don't understand, teacher.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing works. You realize you haven't understood anything at all, and you freeze. Often you give up trying again. That's no coincidence, and it's not stupidity on your part, either. There is an ancient Eastern philosophy that explains exactly why this happens, and more importantly, it reveals what you need to do differently if you truly want to master any music skill. The Japanese have a concept called Manabu. The word they use for learn comes from another word mana, which means to imitate, to music, copy. That's right. For Eastern masters, all genuine learning begins with the complete imitation of someone who has already mastered it. Music, not for its creative interpretation, not for its unique approach, but for its complete, humble, and meticulous copying. Does it seem strange? Just wait until you understand the depth of it. Because while modern Western education tells you, be original, music, think differently, find your voice, Eastern wisdom responds with a brutal question. How can you have your own voice if you haven't even learned the language yet? And this difference in approach separates those who truly master a skill from those who only think they do. Author Austin Kleon writes the following in his book Steal Like an Artist. Don't wait until you know who you are to start. Music, in the same book, he writes, if we are free from the burden of being completely original, we can stop trying to build something from nothing and embrace influence instead of running away from it. Today, I'm going to tell you Gabriel's story, an ordinary 20-year-old guy who worked in a store in the United States. He enjoyed life. He didn't think much about tomorrow. He had a girlfriend named Mary. Everything was peaceful until the day Mary arrived with news that changed everything. She was pregnant. Gabriel looked at his own life and thought, what now? How am I going to support a family earning a store salary? He needed to change his life, music, fast. And that's when he discovered that understanding something and truly mastering it are 2 completely different things. Before I continue this story, I need to ask you something. If this content is making sense to you, please leave a like on the video below. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell because I bring you in-depth content like this every week. Music, and leave a comment saying what skill do you really want to master. It could be programming. It could be English. It could be playing the guitar. Anything. Comment below. I want to know. Okay. Now, come back with me to Gabriel's story. Chapter 1, The Illusion of Easy Learning. Gabriel decided he was going to learn programming. He researched and saw that programmers earned well, very well, and that if he could get into a good project, music, he would have not only a decent salary, but a solid career path. The problem, he knew absolutely nothing about code. Music, so, he did what anyone would do. He opened Google and searched how to learn programming. And that's where the problem started. He was overwhelmed by content, courses promising you'll become a programmer in 30 days, music, videos saying learn Python in 4 hours, articles talking about finding your own study method. Gabriel was, music, thrilled. It looked easy. He watched videos, lots of videos. He took colorful notes. He created a super organized Notion notebook with all the programming languages he was going to learn. After 2 weeks, Gabriel felt confident. Man, I already know the basics of Python, JavaScript, and even SQL. He understood the concepts. He knew what a variable, a loop, and a function were. Everything made sense in theory. Mary even commented, "Honey, you're doing great. You're almost becoming a programmer." Gabriel smiled. He agreed. He really thought he was learning until he decided to take the test. He started a website with programming challenges for beginners, simple problems, basic things like create a function that adds 2 numbers, music, or write a program that counts from 1 to 10. Gabriel looked at the first challenge, it locked. Wait, how do I even begin? He tried to remember the videos he had watched. He tried to consult his notes, music, but when it came time to get his hands on the code, nothing. He couldn't even solve the first exercise. He spent hours trying. He became frustrated. But I understood everything in the videos. Why can't I do it in practice? That's the illusion of easy learning. You consume content. You think you understand. You feel good. You think you've learned. But understanding is not the same as mastering. Recognizing is not the same as reproducing. And Gabriel was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Because every time he tried to program properly, he failed. And the more he failed, the more desperate, music, he became. Mary's belly is growing. The bills are piling up. And he unable to write 3 functional lines of code. That's when he fell into a YouTube rabbit hole at 2 a.m. And he found an old playlist, a basic programming course, music, completely free. The professor's name was Julian, and the first class had a music, strange title, Why You Need to Stop Trying to Be Original. Gabriel clicked, and in the first 5 minutes, Julian said something that completely changed his perspective. How you won't learn programming by trying to create your own method. You won't learn by trying to, music, be creative from the start. You'll learn by copying. Exactly. Line by line, like a Japanese person learns calligraphy. Gabriel frowned. Copying? Isn't that wrong? But he was desperate, so he kept watching. Chapter 2. The Master and the Method. Julian was no ordinary teacher. He had a slight Asian accent and a disturbing calmness when he spoke. In the second lesson, he explained, have you ever heard of Manabu? It's a Japanese concept. Their word for learn comes from mani, to imitate. The Japanese know something the West has forgotten. You can't innovate in what you don't master. He continued, do you know how a samurai learns to use a sword? He doesn't find his own style on the first day. He copies. He repeats the master's movement 1,000 times, 10,000 times until that movement becomes part of his body. Do you know how a Japanese calligrapher learns? He doesn't express his creativity. He takes the characters of an old master and traces over them again and again, music, and again until his hand knows the path to perfection. Gabriel paused the video. He took a deep breath. This was the opposite of everything he had heard before. Every course, music, every video, every article said, find your method. Be yourself. Think outside the box. But none of that had worked. So he made a decision. He was going to do exactly what Julian told him to do without questioning, without trying to adapt it to his way. He would copy it totally. Julian's next lesson was a simple exercise. Music, write a program that prints Hello World on the screen. Something very simple, but the concept behind what Julian was teaching was transformative. Julian didn't just show the code. He explained music, every character, every space, every semicolon. And then it said, now pause the video, delete everything, and type this exactly again from scratch without copying and pasting, music, every letter. Gabriel thought it was strange. But I already know how to do that. I just saw it. Even so, he obeyed. He erased everything. He tried to rewrite it from memory, and he was wrong. You forgot a parenthesis. You forgot the quotation marks. You wrote print with a capital letter and the code didn't run. How could I forget that? I just saw it. He went back to music, the video. He watched it again. He deleted it again. He wrote it again. He was wrong again. On the 5th try, he finally got it right. And then Julian said something that Gabriel would never forget. If it was easy, you didn't learn. If you didn't feel resistance, you're not creating real memory. Genuine learning is uncomfortable. Always. Gabriel, music, continued, lesson after lesson, exercise after exercise, and Julian was relentless. Copy this. Now erase it. Do it again. Made a mistake. Good. Make 10 more mistakes because each mistake is engraving the correct path in your brain. There was a concept that Julian always repeated. Shu-Ha-Ri. I've touched on this concept several times here on this channel. Shu, to obey. Music, you copy faithfully. Absorb the fundamentals without ego. U. Break. After mastering it, you start to question, adapt, experiment, transcend. That's how you create your own path. But only after completely mastering the path of the masters. Gabriel was going through his Shu phase. And it was humiliating. Copy basic code. Repeat silly exercises. Do the same thing 20 times. But something started to change. After 2 weeks of copying and repeating, Gabriel realized he could write code without thinking so much. His fingers knew the patterns. His mind recognized the errors even before running the program. He wasn't music, just getting programming. He was dominating. Chapter 3. Resistance and Progress. 3 months later, Gabriel landed his first job as a junior programmer. It wasn't glamorous at all. It was a small startup. The salary was low for a programmer, but still 3 times more than he earned at the electronics store. Mary was 6 months pregnant. Music, they managed to rent a better apartment. Things were looking up. But the work was brutal. Gabriel thought that after taking Julian's course, he would know everything, that it would be easy. It wasn't. On the first day, the team leader, a guy named Derek, gave him a project. I need you to create a function that validates email. Nothing too complex. Gabriel returned to the table. He opened the computer and it froze again. Validate email? What do you mean? I know how to do loops. I know how to write functions, but how do I apply this to a real-world problem? He spent for hours trying, researching, making mistakes. He was too embarrassed to ask for help. Man, I'm going to look like an idiot. I've barely started, and I already don't know how to do anything. But at 3 p.m., Derek walked past his desk. So, did you manage it? Music, Gabriel, blushing. I'm having a problem here. Derek sat down beside him. He looked at the code and without judgment, he said, let me show you how I would do it, and he began, music, to write, explaining, showing patterns that Gabriel had never seen before. Gabriel wrote everything down, every line, every detail of the music, logic. And when Derek left, he did what Julian had taught him. He erased everything and tried to rewrite it himself. He made a mistake. Music, he tried again. He made a mistake again. On the 10th try, it worked. And then he understood Derek was his new master. And he needed to continue in the Shu phase, copying, absorbing, repeating. Every time Derek or another senior programmer, music, solved a problem, Gabriel watched like a Zen monk. Not just what they did, but how they thought, music, the order in which they solved things, the shortcuts they used, the way they structured the code, and then alone he tried to reproduce it from scratch without copying and pasting, writing each line. It was tiring, frustrating, slow, but it worked. 6 months later, music, Gabriel no longer struggled with simple problems. He recognized patterns. He knew where to look for solutions. He could debug his own code. Music, he had left the Shu phase and was entering the Ha phase. Breaking patterns, adapting, experimenting. But the foundation had been built by copying, music, imitating, repeating. And that's when he realized something profound. All the senior programmers he admired had done exactly that. Music, they weren't born creative. They had copied masters until they had completely mastered the subject. And only then did they begin to innovate. Understand this. I'm specifically talking about programming in this video. But the concepts I'm presenting can be applied to any area of study. If you want to learn to play an music instrument, start with the basics. Basic patterns, easy songs, play the chords correctly, copy the teacher's hand position, even copy the way the teacher plays the beat. When you master the basics, music, you can move on to the next phase. Chapter 4, Birth and Mastery. There's a phrase Julian kept repeating in the course. Picasso said, "Good artists, music, copy, great artists steal." But the Japanese masters would say something deeper. Masters copied so completely that the technique became inseparable from their own nature, and then they transcended. And there's more. The Japanese have another concept called kata. The repetitive music practice of forms and patterns until complete internalization. In martial arts, a kata is a sequence of movements that you repeat thousands of times. Not to be music, creative, but so that your body learns the perfect movement without thinking. Only when you master the basic kata, then you can improvise in a real fight. That's exactly how it is with any skill. Music. Do you want to be an amazing writer? Copy the masters. Feel how they constructed sentences. Do you want to be a designer? Recreate layouts from professionals you admire pixel by pixel, music, until you understand the decisions behind each choice. Want to play guitar? Don't invent your own style before mastering the basic chords. Copy classic solos note for note. Originality is not the starting point, it's the destination. But to get there, you need to have the humility to copy. And this humility has a name in Japanese, shin, a beginner's mind. I've also touched on this concept in other videos on the channel. And if you're thinking, but I already know this concept, I don't need to hear about it anymore. If you thought that, perhaps you still haven't truly grasped these concepts in their entirety. Shoshin consists of letting go of ego, accepting that you don't know, and fully submitting to the process of learning from those who already have mastery. Chapter 5, The Turning Music Point. Gabriel had been at the startup for a few months when Mary went into labor. Music, he dropped everything and ran to the hospital. And at 3:27 a.m., Noah, a music, was born. A healthy boy with big eyes and a powerful cry. Gabriel held his son in his arms for the first time and cried. Not sadness, but relief, gratitude, pride. 9 months ago, he had nothing. Music, he had no skills. He had no perspective. He had no plan. But he had made a decision to truly learn. And truly learning meant swallowing my pride, copying, repeating, making 1,000 mistakes, and continuing. 3 weeks after Noah's birth, Gabriel received an email from Derek. Music, dude, you've progressed really fast. The company wants to promote you to a full-fledged music position. Come talk to me tomorrow. Gabriel read the email 3 times. Music, he didn't believe it. The next day, Derek explained, you have something that a lot of people don't have. You're not afraid of looking stupid. You ask questions, music, you copy, you practice until you get it right. That's rare. And he continued, there are people here with computer science degrees who get stuck because they think they already know everything. Not you. You have Shoshin. Gabriel smiled. He knew exactly what Derek was talking about. Because Julian had taught, the greatest obstacle to learning is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge. And Gabriel had shattered that illusion when he accepted being an imitator, music, before being a creator. Today, Gabriel is a senior programmer. Music, he leads projects, he teaches junior programmers. And you know what he says to each new programmer who joins the team. Forget everything they told music, you about finding your own method. In the beginning, you'll copy, you'll imitate, you'll repeat until you're sick of it. Music, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's the way it is. Because he learned through practice what Eastern masters have known for centuries. Music, if learning seems too easy, you're probably not learning. Real learning is uncomfortable. It's repetitive. It's humiliating. You're going to make mistakes, lots of them. You're going to feel stupid. Music, you're going to want to give up. But it is precisely this resistance that is engraving the skill in your music brain. So to recap everything we've seen today, Manabu learning is imitation. All mastery begins with the complete copying of those who already know. Shu-Ha-Ri, first obey, copy faithfully, then break, adapt and experiment, and only then transcend. Create your own path. Kata, repetitive practice until the skill becomes second nature. Shoshin, beginner's mind, emptying the ego to fully absorb the teachings. And the most brutal lesson of all, you can't break rules you don't master. You can't innovate in what you, music, don't deeply understand. So stop trying to be original before you're competent. Copy, repeat, make a mistake, continue. And when you least expect it, music, you'll look back and realize you've become a master. Not because you invented something new, but because you mastered the fundamentals. So, in music, completely that mastery became a part of you and then you will transcend. Music, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Seriously, this video took time to research and script. And if it made sense to you, I ask you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on notifications and leave a comment below telling me which skill you're going to start mastering for real using these principles. I also invite you to watch this video that's appearing on your screen right now where I talked about the concept of Shoshin and the importance of simplicity. A big hug and see you in the next video.